So we do have different tools, K9 and all that, but sometimes it's a split-second decision. We have to make that decision. So we really train our cops to think, hopefully we're not in a spot where people run, but there are times people are going to run from us. And hopefully we can handle that and catch them and stop them. And we'll try to use the least amount of force possible to detain that person. One, because I want to limit injury to myself, but I also want to limit injury to the suspect running away, because that's a human. That's a person. And I do not want to do harm to anybody if I don't have to.
To refer to your question about what kind of use of force you use in a specific situation, when you first come on as a police officer, we have this discussion a lot about what should you do if A happens and B is happening, is there C, right? And a lot of times there is no answer. I remember talking to my training officer saying, okay, but what about this? What about this? Nobody's going to turn and say, Deputy Robley, right now you should use pepper spray. You have to rely on your training and everything that we've been doing in order to make that decision, and you question that a lot. You go through a phase when you're talking to your training officers, you're at the academy, you're having discussions about use of force and what is appropriate, what is not. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to articulate and you're going to explain to the judge and the court and everybody else why you did what you did that day for that incident. And all great questions, all questions that we have been thinking about since the day we thought about going into law enforcement. And I wish there was a book that said if A and B are present, C should happen, but the law isn't written like that. Human nature isn't written like that. When there's a situation going on, it's so dynamic. It is the weirdest thing because you get tunnel vision, you get auditory things happening, like you start feeling things differently. And when you're stressed out, breathing is important to us, so you have to take all of that into consideration, and you rely on your training to take you where you need to be. And I wish we could be more specific with you and give you a specific answer, but it's very difficult because it just depends on the totality of the circumstances.
I have a quick question. What is the protocol for, so say that you found someone that kind of matches the profile of a potentially dangerous criminal, what is the very first thing that you do as you approach them? Is it what you say, or at what point do you use your gun, or draw your gun, or even have your gun out? What is the at what point does that happen?
First of all, we should always approach you and identify ourselves. Hi, I'm Officer Hawkins. I'm with the Colorado Springs Police Department. Just because I'm in a uniform, it doesn't mean that everybody knows that I'm a cop. I know that might seem weird to you, but it really is true. Sometimes when we make contact with people and there's an emergency trauma, something happening, we kind of have to bring it back to us so they can talk to us. We always identify people. If we have reasonable suspicion and you have things, we would explain to you, hi, I'm making contact with you today because you fit the description of an investigation I am currently on. You're wearing these jeans, you're wearing a t-shirt, you have headphones on. I'd like to talk to you. It is all about communication first and trying to get, if the situation presents. We never want to put the community in any harm's way. We don't want to put ourselves or other officers in harm's way. We don't want to put the person we are interacting with in harm's way. So normally we just approach it like that and say, identify ourselves, tell you why we're making contact, and again, it depends. I can't tell you that there's a specific thing that's going to happen because there's body language, there's tone, there's so many things involved in a situation. It would be irresponsible for me to tell you that there's a certain thing that would make us do one thing or another.
Hi, my name is Philip, and so I understand that there's a lot of variables that go into making that split-second decision, and most of the time that decision is made, it is a split-second decision that's made on the spot based on very specific things that you guys observe in the field and had training for. My question is this though, why, and maybe you already do, maybe it's not used, maybe it's not shown in the videos, but how much first aid training do y'all have? How much trauma first aid training do y'all have? If you have to utilize deadly force on somebody, are there tools, you have a belt full of different things to utilize force, different levels of force at that, but are there any life-saving tools that you carry on you or in your car, and are you trained to use those things?
Excellent question. So, in the 10 years that I've been a deputy, we've only, in the past few years, have started to get some equipment for that. So me personally, I actually carry a kit down here that has a tourniquet, has a chest seal, and has quick lock. That's a personal decision, and this is personal stuff that I bought. So it was not stuff that's supplied. Now there have been kits supplied to us that do have trauma kits, and those are in our cars now, but that's only been within the past couple of years. In terms of training, we're getting better with that as well.
So from the police department side, from CSPD side, we train every single one of our officers to save a life. That's our number one priority. So if you use force, you need to be able to render aid immediately. Once that situation is under control, and if you do not, we hold people accountable for that. That's not. So we do train. I actually, as a sergeant last year, I used my trauma kit twice in a week. Once on a bullet wound to save a kid, and one on a lady who got stabbed in the back, patching her up. The kid was shot by another person. So our cops, we go through trauma training. We learn how to put tourniquets. We learn how to treat ourselves. But the number one thing those kits are used for, most people think they're for us. They're for our community members. So if that happens, if we are involved in a shooting, or if there's a shooting that happens, a lot of times we get called to shootings. We called to a few weeks ago. And our officers got on scene, the first thing they did is render aid to that person. They were shot by somebody else, an unknown suspect. And our cops use their trauma kits, and we'll replace that immediately. So we train every single cop now that comes out of the academy to be able to use that trauma kit, to be able to apply it, and to be able to save a life. A lot of the people that are involved in use of force and stuff, if we use force for ourselves, we render aid immediately. And that's something that we look at too as supervisors. If my cop's not doing that, why weren't they doing that? Why weren't you rendering aid immediately? The situation's under control. We don't let somebody sit in their ground. We help them. Or if you get to a call and somebody's been a victim of a crime and they're bleeding, our first job is life safety, preservation of life. Then we move on to the investigative stuff. So yeah, it's a good question. So all of our cops have those kits, and we are thankful to the community that helps provide those, because it's all through donations that we get those kits.
So one of my questions are, one of them is talking about what we kind of hit on before about how you guys can use constraints or restrain somebody, especially when they're resisting. But I guess what my question is if I feel like, I guess as a citizen, I feel like if I don't want to be touched, what are my rights in the situation if I feel like a police officer is using too much force in regards to handling me in a situation? Because I've seen on many occasions where people are in holds and it's too much, and it's like, are you doing this with malice? Which is, I understand on a person-by-person type of judgment, but do you know any personal rights as far as like not being touched in the situation, or is it kind of the police have control over a person's body if the situation kind of calls for it?
No, that's a great question. Right, that's a question you should know. You should have answers to, right? That's something that every community member should understand. Yeah, you have a right to your personal space, right? But there are certain legal obligations that we have, and rights that allow us to take that freedom away from you, maybe temporarily or permanently, depending on the situation, right? So if we're making a subject contact and I'm saying, hey, I'd just like to talk to you, and you're like, I don't want to talk to you. I have to provide legal grounds if I'm going to talk to you, right? Well, hey, you match the description of somebody I have a reasonable suspicion that you were involved in that, and that gives me the legal right now to detain you and put hands on you. But I have to be able to articulate that. So every time we detain somebody who puts hands on them, we review that to make sure our cops were within. And there's times where we have been in the wrong, and we will make sure that's justified or rectified, and we'll handle that. But one of the things is, if you're being taken into custody and say, hey, you're under arrest, it's probably not the best time to argue that in debate that, right? Because we have body cameras, everything can be reviewed. So what happens is people are like, well, I know my rights, I'm fighting, and then they get in a big fight, which didn't have to be. So if you ever feel like an officer maybe used too much force, or you didn't understand why, that's what we have a review process, right? You can always file a complaint, you can always talk to a supervisor. You don't have to file a formal complaint saying I'm doing it on the police. You can just call us on the phone saying, hey, you can even send a Facebook message to us saying, hey, I felt like I was used, too much force was used, and we will review it, every single thing we review, because it's important that because it's a big deal, right? Taking someone's freedom away. If you don't think it's a big deal, I don't want you being a cop. One of the other things I wanted to say about what CSPD does, and EPSO is doing the same thing too, is we train a lot, most of our cops in crisis intervention training. Do you guys know what crisis intervention training is? So it's really kind of helping people and cops learn how to deal with people in mental health crisis. If we're called there, do you think the person's in a mental health crisis? They may not be diagnosed with a mental health thing, but if there's something going on with the family, maybe domestic violence, or there's a situation where a crime just was committed, that's a health crisis, right? We're in a crisis mode, and I don't want the cops in my space at the time. So one of the things is we train our cops to start to de-escalate things. I'm unique, and our department's unique because I'm a mindfulness instructor. We train all of our cops now that go through CIT in mindfulness. I don't know if we're one of the few agencies in the country, but I think more can hopefully join on, because what we try to do is, it's okay to be yelled at, right? And I gotta teach my cops that. It's okay to vent your frustration. There's a time and place for it. And I want my cops, and I want all the cops to be okay, words are not gonna kill me right now. Just take it down. Because sometimes, right, you need to get that frustration out. When that frustration comes out, then we can start having dialogue. So we train our cops in mindfulness. We train our cops to, okay, let's slow down, take a deep breath, let's slow this situation down. There's some situations we have to act instantly, but majority of police work, we don't have to act that fast. We can slow things down. So like you were talking about being arrested, right? We can slow things down sometimes, and hopefully, if you can probably talk to the last 16 years, everybody I've arrested, I think every single person has thanked me. And man, that was a bad day, thanks, you didn't treat me like crap. Well, why would I? I don't want to be treated that way. So we teach our cops a lot about personal space. We teach our cops a lot about understanding the mental framework or what's that person's going through at the time. So we do teach mindfulness. It's a very interesting technique to do, but right, we trust our cops carrying guns. Who else would you want carrying a gun? Somebody that's doing it mindfully. So I think we're doing a lot of progress on that, but if you ever have a thing and you don't feel comfortable, and you're saying, hey, am I under arrest? And they say yes, go in custody, you let us know. I will investigate every single time. We will investigate every single time because we want to make sure our cops do it right. And if we're in the wrong, we will make sure that's handled.
I'm going to get to your questions. I see hands popping up, and I'm going to start with this person right here. Okay, I'll give it to Connor. But I just have one question. One of the things I did at my previous institution, and I tried to do here when we had our first forum, is to talk about what those rights and responsibilities are. So we use some terms that people here may not be familiar with, like reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Can you give the level of powers that police have to approach, detain, search, and seizure? Just give some more context so people can understand that police have certain authorities and rights, but it only goes to a certain point before it violates a citizen's right. Can we just have some discussion about what those rights and responsibilities are? And then Connor, I'll get your question next.
Hold the microphone. Must be me. I'm holding it. So, I think this is where we're going with it. The initial meeting of a police officer on the street can be a consensual contact. Hi, how are you? And you say, hi, I'm fine, how are you? And we have a nice conversation. The next thought might be that I say, hi, how are you? And you say, I don't want to spend any more time with you, and you walk away. Okay. So we've got consensual interactions with folks. Just, we're out at Starbucks, we're out on the street, we say hi. The next level that I think, and you guys help me out if I miss something, would be, I would go with reasonable suspicion, but then there's also that kind of investigative mode where I don't necessarily know what's going on. So somewhere in there, there's our contact. Then maybe I just want to find out a little bit more information, like a name or something like that. If there's some type of crime or event that occurs, I now have knowledge that a crime has occurred, I would now raise it to, and I have the thought that the individual that I'm talking to is the person that committed that crime. Not just the thought, but I have information that leads me to believe this. Descriptions, events, people specifically saying this is the person that committed the crime. Then we go to reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is a little bit more of an investigative time, and I'm going to stop and communicate with you and try and figure out if you're the person that actually committed the crime. If I find out from the information that I've gained that you are the person that has committed the crime, that leads me to what's called probable cause. Probable cause is now the time where I am going to place you under arrest. This is a time where I said, I've been given enough information. Yes, you are the individual that I believe committed this crime, and so now I'm going to place you under arrest. Where else do we need to go from there? Yeah, help me, ladies.
So just adding on to that a little bit, so like you said, a consensual contact could be just us stopping to say hi to you, or hey, there's been this problem going on in the community, can you tell me about that? And you can choose to talk to us, or you can choose to not to, and that's fine. You can communicate that with us. When we go up a level, it's gonna be, like she explained, reasonable suspicion. And at that point, we would expect that that person provide us with their name and identifying information. We have the right to ask for that at that point. And then probable cause would, again, be the step where we take somebody into custody.
Probable cause, to be a little bit more specific, is that we have evidence. We have like a video,